Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Hayward. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Welcome to another episode of Business Growth Talks. Today we're privileged to be hosting Mike Handcock, a multifaceted entrepreneur, author, and global speaker whose influence spans across multiple industries. Mike is one of the only 40 speakers worldwide to receive the prestigious Certified Speaking Professional Global designation and currently serves as Vice President of Global Speakers Federation. He has also authored 14 books, with 7 of them becoming international bestsellers, and has earned 6 Amazon One titles in business and personal development. As a musician, Mike has released 13 albums, achieving #1 on iTunes in 2013. His accolades don't stop there. Mike has been recognized as a philanthropic efforts, including a mention by President Clinton for his contribution to Sage Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. Today, we're deep diving into Mike's extensive experience, exploring the stories of his clients, the intricacies of his business ventures, and the personal journey that has shaped his career. Hey, Mike, how are you today?
I'm great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining me. So the first question that I ask all of my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
A business mindset for me is the type of mind that you have a can-do and a creative attitude towards things. In other words, a natural banker's mindset would be, what boxes are going to knock this application back? Whereas a business mindset is, what boxes are going to take this idea forward? So I think realistically, any entrepreneur, anybody with a business mind it's not as simple as being an optimist. They've got to have a mindset that goes, I'm going to find a way through this because this is the right thing to do.
How in your career, very varied and done lots of different things in your career, how have you been able to maintain that entrepreneurial, that business mindset and be able to work through problems and keep on delivering?
Might seem a strange answer, Mark, but constant travel. There it is.
Okay.
We owned a travel company for 12 years. We were very lucky. We sold it in October 2019.
Oh.
How's that for timing?
Yeah.
But we realized, and it was an experiential travel company. It was called Soul Journeys. And people came because you can work with them in an event space for half a day or 2 days or something. You can take them on a retreat to Bali for 4 or 5 days, but it's different traveling with people. And we would do themed tours. We did a Viking tour. We did a Peruvian shaman tour. We did multiple Egyptian tours. We ran Asia's first spiritual cruise. But coming back to the question, is that we realized that the reason that people love to travel is not because if you ask somebody, why do you love to travel? They go, oh, to see new places, meet new people, experience the foods of the world. None of that's true. The reason why people truly love to travel is because they love who they are when they're traveling. They turn up as the best version of themselves, the most authentic, real version of themselves. And that's what they love. So to come back to your question, the mindset that I've been able to create that's kept me going through this constant traveling reminds me of who I am. It places me in situations where I have to use all parts of my personality and good looks to get through, whether it be negotiating with a customs official or negotiating with a taxi driver that wants to rip me off, or having some life-changing experience somewhere. And I think all of those things just make you a broader and more worldly person because you understand what's going on in the world. You are not focused on what media wants to push down your throat. You're not focused on what your community says is the way that things are. You understand different things. So I think that enables you to think more creatively. So travel's a big one for me. And the second one is surrounding yourself with people who are brighter than you are. I think it was Jim Rohn who said, firstly, Tony Robbins stole it off him, but Jim Rohn said, you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to hang out with smart people and people that not only smart, but are really good people and fun people. If you can find fun, smart, good people to hang out with, I think you'll accomplish a lot in life.
So let's just go back to that idea of being the best version of yourself on holiday or being away, let's say. What are the characteristics of Mike when he's traveling? What's the best version of yourself? How would you describe it? Or how would your friends describe it?
I think my wife would describe it, because she's the one who travels with me the most. I think she would describe it as the curious inner child exploring the world, the person who wants to deeply understand the history and significance of something that happened in a place, the individual who wants to unplug what's going on at a surface level somewhere and look for the deeper reason of why that custom exists or why people act like that. And I think for me, it's what my friends would say is that I become more of the creative, more of the musician, more of the mystic. I'm never too far away. Oh, these suckers are heavy, but I'm never too far away from one of my guitars, right? So traveling gives me inspiration for writing music, for creating businesses. Sometimes it's as simple as standing on a beach and drawing a line in the sand and going, shall we do this or do that? You will never accomplish greatness sitting in a room looking at a white wall. And that's what most people do all day, especially since COVID, right?
Yeah.
They sit in, you and I are sitting in our homes at the moment. It's not quite white wall behind me, but luckily I've got a view out the front. But people who stare at white walls all day, their minds close in. And the way I like to give people that intuition of what it's like is, imagine the latest Avatar movie comes out and you've got an option, and your option is A, to watch it on your phone, which means that you have this experience with it, or B, go to the cinema with the latest Dolby surround sound on the big screen. Which one is going to ignite you more? The answer is obviously the big screen. It's the same for us. We can't be creative if our pineal gland is interacting with a wall that's 2 feet in front of us or a laptop that's this far in front of us. We have to have depth of field, because depth of field, sunshine triggers our pineal gland, something pops, and suddenly we become creative and we go, where did these ideas come from? I've never had these before. So it's all part of it. And that's stuff that ancient people knew, but these days we've forgotten. We think the answers are in a laptop or a phone or in AI.
I want to come back to your creative side in a minute, but the question, I also ask a lot of people this question. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, business enthusiasts, ready to boost your entrepreneurial journey? Tune in to the Growth Gear Podcast with Tim Jordan, presented by Carbon 6. Tim dives into cutting-edge business growth strategies and new brand insights. Whether you're a startup founder or a seasoned exec, gain the tools to elevate your business. Subscribe to the Growth Gear with Tim Jordan on your favorite podcast platform. Shift into high gear. The Growth Gear is your guide to fast-paced business success.
I was orphaned at age 15. I was an only child to a solo parent, and I had no grandparents, no aunties, no uncles, or any of that sort of stuff. And I came home at age 15 and found my mother dead from a heart attack. And so at 15, I was by myself. And it was funny because anybody went, when you get back on your feet, give us a call and come around and have dinner. Are you freaking kidding me? So my best friend at the time's parents put up their hand and said, look, we'll take him. And I spent my last 2 years of high school living at my best friend's house. So I think what that taught me is a couple of things. Not all of them are good, but firstly, it taught me my friends are my family. So I became very good at building solid relationships with people. And I think that's really helped. Secondly, it gave me if it's going to be, it's up to me sort of attitude. So I realized very early on that nobody was going to really bail me out. Whereas most folks, if they get in financial trouble or something like that, their mother, their father, their brother, their sister, somebody bails them out somewhere in their family. That wasn't going to happen. But I think the downside of that is that I felt that I had to do everything alone. So it was probably about 15 or 20 years ago now where I used to write in the front of my diary every year, always ask for help, because I was so not used to asking for help.
Right. How do you think that's affected you? Like you said about being independent, and I think that's a positive. Like obviously, losing your family is incredibly devastating. I've also lost my family in my mid-30s, which was
I'm really sorry.
very tough. It gives you a resilience, though, having those hardships. And I was talking to my daughter this weekend about something, and I was explaining the situation that she had a tricky time and how she now feels that I explained to her that she now feels stronger by a negative experience. And that was a bit of a revelation to her. And I think it is something that we all want to have the perfect life. You've got great parents, you've got great family, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, you've got great friends. But in reality, these things don't always work out. And do you think it's given you a deeper sense of resilience in your older life as well?
100%. And I wish I'd realized that earlier, Mark. There was losing my mother when I was 15. And then obviously I didn't have the opportunity to go to university. Like all my friends toddled off to university. I had to go get a job because I had to bring in some money to pay for my life. So I didn't actually go to university till I was in my 30s, and I did it by correspondence, or extramurally as they call it then. But been married before, so went through that whole debacle as well. Had business partners rip me off, had businesses fail, got fired from my extremely well-paying job when I was 27 and living at large. I'd made my first million by the time I was 27, driving my Porsche and thinking that I'd arrived, and got fired from that job. And so I think all of these things that come around and at the time we think are devastating, boy, do they give us resilience. And they teach us something about ourselves. I don't want to focus too much on the getting fired from the job thing because it'll take a long while to go through. But basically, I was the leading manager of 150 managers that the company had for sales. So I ran a sales team of about 23 people. I was 27 at the time, and I'd been doing it for 3 years. And I was still the youngest person in the company to do that. And the national sales manager was 55 years old, grumpy, and thought I should do things his way. But his way is what other people were doing, which wasn't working. So I was doing it my way. So he got very disappointed with that and started screaming at me in front of all my staff, which turned into me telling him exactly what I thought of him when I got him in private. So he manufactured a way to fire me. It took him a month or so to come up with some documents that 5 years later were thrown out of court. Never sue a public company. It takes 5 years of your life to get anywhere, even if you win. And so then that was bad enough. So I was pretty devastated from being fired and losing my income and obviously the reputation damage and everything like that. But then a competitor came to me and said, look, we'd really like to take you because we know how good you are. And then this guy rung the competitor after I'd been there 3 weeks and rung their CEO and said, he's a bad apple. And they came and fired me again, very apologetically. So I went and saw the CEO of the competitor company. And these are multi-billion-dollar companies, Mark, right? These are like British Telecom, that level of company, Barings Bank, etc., big companies. And so I went and saw him and I said, listen, this has jumped up. I told him the story and he said, if you can get me some really good references in a week from now, then I'll reconsider my position. I don't know what made me do it, but I went and got over 50 written recommendations from everybody from the mayor of the city to previous clients to high-profile individuals at the previous company that were in senior management to leading celebrities, etc. That I'd met, I just asked them in that week, and I went back to his office and I put a file down this thick on his desk and I said, there's your references. And he just went, oh, he said, we'd love to have you on board. But I think that what the process taught me there, and I had a great relationship with that company. I owned a business within that company that I had with them, and I sold that about 3 years later. And I had a great relationship. I still got some of my best friends are from that time. But what it taught me is just because somebody wants to knock you down, you get yourself back up and don't go into your hole. There's a great movie called Elizabethtown featuring Kirsten Dunst and Orlando Bloom. And in the movie, he loses $5 billion of his company's money.
Right.
And of course, he's having this massive pity party, and he gets on this airplane. His mother dies that day, or his father, and he's going to the funeral, and he's just devastated. And Kirsten Dunst is the air hostess, and they hook up. And then at one point, he realizes he's going to have to tell her what an absolute disaster he is. So he tells her, and she says this line, which I saw the movie 20 years ago, probably, but it stuck with me to this day. She says, I'll give you 5 minutes to wallow in delicious pity. And then you have to kiss me. And I thought that's such a beautiful way of reconfiguring this crap that happens to all of us in life. Nobody has a good ride, right? Is that go and wallow, have your pity party, do that.
Yeah.
Time frame it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I worked with a guy who was fired from a company that I worked for. He was a friend. We were at a wedding 10 years later, and he was whinging to me about the company. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get cancer. Just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Very true. And a lot of it's the flip side as well. So if you're having a bad time, yes, feel it, feel what you're feeling. You have to feel, but you do have to move forward. Also, when things are very good, you should stop as well. But stop and just enjoy the moment, even if it's, as you say, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, for a short period of time. I think we should let our emotions be expressed, but don't let them overtake what you're doing, whether they're positive or negative. I saw this thing, I'm sure it's been quoted by other people, but I saw this thing with Tom Hanks doing a conversation with other actors. And he said, "It too shall pass. You'll be an Oscar-winning actor. It too shall pass. You'll have a complete flunk on a movie. It too shall pass." You have to realize that either there are exceptionally good times that will pass, or exceptionally bad times that will pass also. And it was a very telling. I don't know. I've not seen it that regular. I think I saw it on social media when I first saw it. And I thought that's really powerful. So really powerful, because things change, things evolve, things move. Whether there's good times or bad times, it will come to an end, and you have to move on to the next thing.
I think it was Russell Brand who said he's had 15 minutes of fame 4 times in his life and 5 years of hell for most of the other times.
Mike,
but it's all good, folks. Own your own business. You'll be okay. Don't worry. Don't listen to us. We're just negative old buggers. No, it's not true. I think we're here because we want people to become the best that they can possibly be. That's why you do this show. That's why I'm on this show.
Right, moving on. Tell me about the Circle of Excellence group. How has it evolved since its creation?
Well, we talk about it. Business happens in a level of spirals, right? It's like there's 7 levels to it. If you look at Virgin Group or Apple, they're obviously the level 7. We're in a level 4 now, so it's had 3 iterations before this. But the Circle of Excellence exists with one simple premise only: to help entrepreneurs and conscious leaders to play a bigger game in their own lives. That means reach much more of their potential than they ever believed possible. We do that through events, coaching programs, books, magazines, online courses, all the ways in which you can ever educate yourself. We're involved in them. Retreats, anywhere from, we're running one in Bali in September. We ran one on the Greek islands in June. So there's numbers of different ways in which people interact with us. And our clients are in more than 50 countries in the world, and we travel extensively. So they're not 50 countries because we're connected to them on LinkedIn. They're 50 countries because we've been there and met with them. So I think we have been lucky enough to build a business that's been in existence 20 years next year. but we've been lucky enough to build a business where I can't remember the last time we had a difficult client. It's 15 years ago. I can't remember the last time we had people with really big issues. It's almost never. And I think our clients, most of our clients, our top clients, are actually close personal friends of ours these days. So I think we've been very blessed with that.
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're a podcast host or someone wanting to be interviewed on podcasts as a guest, visit podmatch.com. Podmatch automatically connects ideal podcast guests and hosts together for interviews. We always say it works just like a dating app, but instead of connecting you for dates, it connects you for podcast interviews. Podmatch has connected over 85,000 guests and hosts together for interviews that listeners love, all while saving you countless hours of administrative work through built-in automations. If you're ready to level up your podcast interviews on either side of the mic, start today by visiting podmatch.com.
But how do you help people that have not heard of Circle of Excellence Group? You're saying you're helping entrepreneurs, business owners be the best version of themselves. But so obviously you've talked a couple of times about face-to-face retreats and gatherings and getting together. But how else do you help those entrepreneurs, help those business owners?
Thanks for the question, Mark. I think firstly, I don't know of anybody else in the world, and I'm yet to find them, who does what we do. Most people specialize, like they'll increase somebody's marketing potential or increase their ability to sell or help them build better systems or something like that, or help them with people and talent. Because of our exposure, and we've done over 3,000 events, we've been doing it 20 years, 50 countries, 300,000 people, we've actually been able to, because we've been tasked with solving a lot of problems, we've actually been able to create the whole A to Z of solutions in business. So whether you've got brand problems, whether you've got marketing problems, whether you've got customer service problems, et cetera, we've been able to solve those. And there are 5 levels that people can interact with us at. So at the bottom level, they can buy a book or get a very cheap online course. So it's no problem about that. Then they can move up and they can come to an event. So we run one-day events, we run 3-hour masterminds, we run the retreats like I've mentioned. So we do that. They can come into a group coaching environment where we would have one of our coaches work with a group of people and take them on a process. Sometimes that's industry specific. So we're running one for speakers at the moment. We've got one for entrepreneurs starting next week. Then they can go to one coaching where people actually work with them one-on-one with their business. That's the 4th level. And the 5th level is we bring our whole A team, which includes Mike, includes Lundy, includes our marketing experts, everybody that you've got, and we just come in and work on every aspect of your business. So I think because you've got this on video, and I really wasn't expecting to do this, so forgive me for reaching out of shot, folks. This is one of our content books.
Okay. Wow.
So in here, I just have this in front of me. There are over, I think, 400 business systems that simplify the way businesses that have been run. So there
And
it is.
just so people who are on audio only, so Mike has just shown us a booklet, a very thick booklet with processes and ways that he is able to help business owners and entrepreneurs. And
probably about 3 inches thick, or maybe
Yeah.
what's that, 10 centimeters, and it's over 500 pages in there. And all of that relates to online course material, which then becomes the process of coaching and consulting and different things like that.
So if a listener's or viewer is watching this and listening to this and thinking, I have a problem with making it up, operations in my business, my sales are going, my marketing's going great, my sales are going great, but I just can't deliver to my clients in an effective, and maybe I can't get a renewal clients, or what would you, if someone has that problem and they're thinking about that in their business and they don't know how to overcome that, what's the first step that they should do if they want to reach out to you?
Okay, so it's definitely broader than that as well. So I would simply suggest that they go to our website, which is www.circleofexcellence.biz. At the top there, you'll see an offer to complete an assessment. That's going to give them a lot of help because it's going to show them what's lacking in their business and what's very powerful in their business. It covers all aspects of business. It only takes 5 minutes to complete, so it's not onerous. In there, they can also ask if they want, hey, I would like to chat with somebody about my business. If that's the case, then one of us will be in contact with them. We see those assessments, they come in daily. One of us will be in contact. We'll have a no obligation on either side. In other words, we won't be trying to sell you anything. We'll just ask you questions and give you some advice. And if we think there's a way forward for you with us, and you think there's a way forward for you with us, it'll come out in the conversation and then we'll move forward. Otherwise, you'll get some great advice and you'll move on.
How do you compare? It sounds like you've got something someone introduced to me relatively recently in the last sort of 6 months is EOS, so Entrepreneur Organization System. How do you think you compare to someone that, like EOS, that has a whole framework of assessing your business to know where you should be getting better at operations, sales, marketing, various other areas? How do you compare to those sorts of organizations?
Yeah, I know them very well, actually, and I've done work for them in 4 or 5 countries around the world over the last 15 years or so. The major difference between what a company like that does and what we do is their material is based on academics. And our material is based on sitting in over 350 masterminds in 20 countries with people like you and I, saying, what are your problems, and finding a way to fix them simply. So a lot of times when you look at a business, you'll get the academic view of what to do, which always involves you having to spend a lot of money and do a lot of work. And then you'll come to us and we'll go, no, just do that and that'll fix it. And it's literally that. But of course, we've gone through a lot of hours and a lot of time and a lot of energy to find out the solutions to that. And we've never, ever not being able to solve a problem. So it doesn't matter how big a business is, what it is, that's just the way it is. And that's why I say there's nobody like us on the planet, because we've not found them. A lot of those systems, they're good and they're useful, but it's just like your university course that you and I probably did. I did a management degree and I probably used 4 things out of it in my whole leadership and management life.
Yep.
The rest of it's superfluous. So what we do is we cut that 90% out and we use the 10% that's useful.
What's the future for Circle of Excellence? What do you see that as the next stage for your business?
I think for us, it's about finding more people who wish to own their own business under our umbrella. And so we have all the systems, we have all the marketing, we have all the product. People can literally say, I want to own a business where I coach, consult, train businesses and people, but I don't know where to start. You don't need to. Just come to us. And we have that whole turnkey A to Z system for people and we can help you wherever you're located in the world, whether it's Lahore in Pakistan or New York City, it doesn't matter.
Amazing. Tell me about your role at Global Speakers Federation.
Global Speakers Federation is a not-for-profit, and it is the governing body that looks after 17 main associations around the world, which we say comprises 30 countries, but I think it's probably 40 plus countries. So let me explain that to you. So there is a speaking association in the UK where you live called Professional Speakers Association United Kingdom, which covers Scotland, Southern and Ireland as well. So in there, anybody who wants to be a professional speaker will come and join that. And there's academics that they can go through to become a better speaker, to get certified, etc., at various levels as there is. And then there's camaraderie, there's best practices that they can learn. And through their relationship with the Global Speakers Federation, they can access the world of speakers, the world of best practice for the speaking industry. So think of it as the thought leadership industry, because there are around about 55,000 registered speakers in the world, over 90,000 on LinkedIn, about 55,000. They're your thought leaders. They're the people who are in the boardrooms of the Facebooks and the Googles and the WhatsApps every day, giving advice or speaking to their leaders and audiences about how to do things better. So the Global Speakers Federation is the body that covers that. I just moved literally last week from vice president to president-elect. I'll be president next year. I've been involved with Global Speakers Federations for 10 years, and I've been on the board of, I'm a life member of the Professional Speakers Association of New Zealand and the founding president of the Virtual Speakers Association, which we launched just before COVID, actually, in 2019, which has hundreds and hundreds of members around the world, that in countries like, we have members in Afghanistan, we have members in Cameroon and places that are developing and really want to develop thought leadership and speaking. So it's something that I give a lot of time to, along with 2 other boards that I sit on, but it's something that's part of my industry, and it's something that I really love because I really like the idea of positively influencing companies of the future to be better global citizens. Hence, I'm actually wearing a T-shirt today, which is one of our brands, Global Citizen.
It's interesting. The role of public speaking pre-COVID was massive. There was a lot of live events being shown. There was a lot of key speakers, your Gary Vaynerchuk, your Tony Robbins, all those people, the elite. Grant Cardone did this massive conference, and I know a lot of people are doing that. Do you think there is still value in those types of events versus being able to do it on Zoom or online? Because you get into the atmosphere of the event, and I know you're passionate about face-to-face events and in live events. Where does it now sit, the online event versus the face-to-face, like in the industry side, from your perspective?
Sure. There's a massive return by corporations into hosting conferences that are live and moving away from the virtual space. I can't give you a statistic on that off the top of my head. I read one recently, but it's a J-curve return to live events. And the reason why is because in this space, people just simply aren't engaged in most companies. I'm a little different because I've been around a long time and I'm bold. So if we're doing a virtual event for an organization and people have their cameras off, I don't speak until they've all got their cameras on.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of speakers will just go, I'm getting paid, I'm just going to speak anyway. But no, I want to see people. I want to interact with people, and they're not going to learn if they're lying down on their couch at home in their pajamas and flicking on their phone and listening to 3 words from the speaker. And that's what their company's paying for. So I think companies have identified that. So there is this massive return. The conferences, so that you're talking about with Grant and with Gary V and Tony Robbins and those sort of guys, there's definitely less of them. And I think because the marketing cost is very high to fit people into those type of rooms. Although I'm good friends with one of the founders of the biggest company in the world that does that, Success Resources, out of Asia. And they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I think they are probably the biggest events company in the world at running business events. They run the Tony events and those sort of events. They just had Robert Kiyosaki here 2 months ago in South Africa. I don't know how many people he had, but he was sold out in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Right. So my guess is they had 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 people for him. Those events are probably, there's a lot more pressure on them from a financial aspect because they're generally relying on low price ticket sales and high up sales from the speaker or wad of speakers that they have.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of those events, but I think to go to an event where you're going to meet people and you get an idea in the room and you get the buzz for the room, that's why I'm still excited about live events. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I agree. How do you think your music has influenced your approach to business?
It's as much a part of my business as, actually, it's more a part of my business than a business plan. So let me try and unpack that one for you, Mark. For instance, every business has a rhythm. Every business has a melody. Every business can either turn up the volume on it or turn down the volume. Mm-hmm. Every business has a pitch. Sometimes it's out of key, right? A business is just an extension of human beings And from a quantum physics level, all matter comes from light and all light comes from sound. Right. So at a fundamental basis, we are just sound. So therefore, through my understanding of music, and don't get me wrong, I didn't go to a conservatory of music. I play totally by ear. Any ability I've had to read music, I've lost over the years. Just like Dave Gilmour or Eric Clapton, they don't read music either, but they're 10 times better guitar player than I am. But I think for me, it's about we integrate it. We understand the rhythm of business. We understand when to change key and things like that. So there's a lot of music terminology that we use in business, a lot that we teach our clients once they get up to the A list with us. And we don't teach it on the lower sort of levels, but it is in some of my books. And I think the other thing is when we run a lot of events, and I've written a lot of music, and most people come to our events, they don't realize that probably 70% of the music they're listening to is I've written. So that enables me to do something that's in my passion as well, and make it part of what I do. And sometimes if I give a big keynote, like I'm giving a big keynote later this year in Indonesia, so I'm going to be taking guitars, and there'll be guitars and amplifiers on stage.
Amazing.
And that'll be part of it.
And another thing, the impressiveness of your book writing as well. What's the journey been like
with all this stuff? Shouldn't we just be talking about business? But
I want to talk about you. I wanted to hear more about you. Yes, obviously your business is very important, but I want to get to know you a little bit, Mike. So what about your books? What's been your experience? Because from my perspective, I've shied away from writing books because I'm very happy to sit here and have a conversation with you and talk to all of the other couple of hundred people that I've interviewed. And I find it fun. I find it enjoyable. I get to learn things from you and other people that probably wouldn't be able to get that experience. So this is my passion. This is what I love doing. But writing books, I've always have found that it's a challenge for me. I don't enjoy it. What's been your experience of writing those books?
I probably have a few things to share on that. So firstly, we've got a great client and friend, Dennis Giannoutsos. He has the #2 business podcast in New Zealand called Leadership is Changing. It's very corporate. He's done 600 podcasts now, and he's just taken all of those, filtered them all into AI, and come up with the 43 lessons of leadership from his 600 guests. And I think I haven't read the book yet. It's literally coming out this week, so I can't comment on it, but I think it's a lovely idea. And it gets him to become a published author, gives him something else to sell to his crew. Maybe you could do that. Secondly is I was very lucky early on, like a long time ago, 2001, I went to a book writing event, strangely, another live event, and run by Penguin in New Zealand. And one of the speakers they had there that day was a guy called Richard Webster. And he had ghost written over 200 books and had 43 international bestsellers. This is a serious guy. Nice. Yeah. In New Zealand, he's a guy who wore a cardigan, had a scruffy beard, and nobody knew who he was. In America, apparently he's a rock star. They used to pick him up from limousines in the airport. Nice. But Richard taught me a model to write books back 20-something years ago. And that model stuck with me. I've taught it to hundreds of people, and I can share the basis of it here on the podcast for anybody, any listener who wants to write a book, because it can really simplify it. Firstly, if you want to write a book on, say, podcasts, let's say we want to write a book on podcasts, we just get a bunch of sticky notes. And so on the green sticky notes, we're going to come up with what are 10 things that we could talk about on podcasts. So we could talk about the history of podcasts. We could talk about the technology that you need. We could talk about how important the brand is, what platforms you should use, what the format of your podcast is. Already, I've come up with 6 things. So the idea is if you come up with 10 things, you've got 10 chapters.
Right.
Now, the first thing I mentioned was the history of podcasts. So let me think about that. I could go back to what are 10 things I can think of there. I can think the first recording. In fact, was it Alexander Graham Bell or Edison? I can't remember off the top of my head. I could think of the very first podcast. I could think of who's the podcast gurus who've done like 10,000 podcasts. I could talk about the Joe Rogan experience. I could talk about a number of these. I can come up with 10 things under that, 10 things under the technology, 10 things under the format, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So now I've got all these Post-it notes, and now I just put them up on my glass window here. And I go, these are the order of the chapters. This is what I want in this chapter. This is what I want in this chapter. This is what I want in this chapter. Now, my role as an author, if I've got 10 chapters, and by the way, you could have 12 or 15, but 10, and I've got 10 things under each one of them. And by the way, you could have 8 to 15 of those.
Yeah.
If I just write 400 words on each, which is an A4 page on every one of those bullet points that I've got, I'll have a book which is the average size of a non-fiction book.
Nice.
So people make book writing such a big thing.
Yeah.
But actually, if you chunk it down, just write one page. I'm using a Samsung microphone here. I'm sure I could write a page on microphones. I'm sure I could write another page on cameras. I'm sure I could write another page on lighting. So I'm starting to build out my whole tech chapter just there.
It's an amazingly simple but effective way of writing a book. I actually, listening to what you said, I actually feel a lot more empowered, because I feel all at sea when it comes to writing a book. I wouldn't, and just that simple 10 subjects, within each subject, 10 points, that it suddenly becomes a little bit more manageable. It feels more doable. So I think, and thank you for that. That's been very revealing. Do you enjoy it? Do you like it? One final
thing on that.
Yeah.
Is Mark Victor Hansen, who co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul with Jack Canfield. They sold 140 million books in the series. I was talking to him one day and I asked him to write the foreword to one of my books back in 2010. He said, "No, I can't do that, Mike. I've never written a word in my life." So what do you mean? He said, "No, I don't write." I said, "So what do you do?" He said, "Oh, no." He said, "I just dictate thoughts and then somebody else puts them into something that makes sense."
Right.
So I said, "Okay, if I record something, will you just say something and I'll turn your forward into something that makes sense?" He spoke for, I think it was 1,600 words, and I didn't end up changing a word. There was the forward to my book. Thanks, Mark. You can also these days just talk and transcribe it and get AI to organize your thoughts. It's so beautiful and easy.
It is. It is. How do you think you've evolved as a leader?
I think I'm less compromising now, more bold, much more intuitive, and I learned a great formula from a billionaire once. He asked me, "Do you know what the secret is to becoming a billionaire?" I said, "No, obviously, because I'm not a billionaire." He said, "It comes down to 3 things. It comes down to intuition, network, and decisiveness." And he said to me, he said, "I'm far less decisive than I ever was." He said, "I think I'm coming to the end of my business," because he went to Houston to have a look at a new private jet, and it took him 5 minutes to make a decision. He said it's the longest time he's ever taken to make a decision in his whole life. And this guy came from abject poverty. He didn't inherit money. And so I think I've become more decisive. So I think that's how I've changed as a leader over the years, whereas before I was more pleasing.
Right.
And not wanting to upset the apple cart.
Do you think
I just got off a call with one of my business partners half an hour ago, and I said, "You've got somebody who works for you in Asia and they're BSing you because I've just spoken to them, and you need to basically cancel that guy's contract and move on to something different." I would have never said that 10, 15 years ago. I would have tried to solve the problem, but I know the problem's not solvable straight away. So just move on.
Yeah, and I think being more bold and more decisive actually comes from experience. And something I heard on a podcast was when you hit your 40s, so I'm 44, you have wisdom. In your 20s, you have energy. Your 30s, you make decisions about your life. And in your 40s, you have wisdom. And I think it's a really good way of viewing, because once you've got kids, you impart wisdom onto them. Once you've got employees, you impart wisdom onto them. Once you've got if you're helping people with their businesses, you're imparting your wisdom. But that only comes from experience of 20 years of experience in life, as well as business and family and friends and everything around that. And I think it's underrated in some ways, that idea that 20 years worth of experience working or running your own businesses can be incredibly impactful for other people, even in ways that you don't even think they could be impactful, but they actually are. What's your view on wisdom and growing older?
I think nobody likes growing older when you get aches and pains, right?
True.
But I think from a wisdom perspective, there's a certain thing that money can't buy, and that's just lifetimes of experience. I remember sitting down with Lundy, my wife's 94-year-old grandmother, and chatting to her about aspects of her life and things she's learned. I learned stuff, and it's magnificent what you learn. Anybody who thinks that somebody who's 60 or 70 is past their use-by date, some people are past their use-by date at 25.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And I think what can really help entrepreneurs now is getting cross-generational teams. So you as a 44-year-old, if you had a team that involved a 20-year-old that's going to understand tech probably better than you, I'm not sure what your tech skills are. It gets harder as you get older. And then if you've got, say, a 65-year-old who's been around and seen all the BS, you've got a magnificent team there that can really guide and help you on things. And then you're bringing your own wisdom, but still energy and exuberance into that. I think it's brilliant. I think we're too quick to cut people off who have been around. But by the same token, people have to manage their energy. There's some very old 40-year-olds out there, and there's some very young 60-year-olds.
Yeah, I would agree. I would 100% agree. How would you describe your risk appetite?
Good question. My risk, I always believed I was a huge risk taker. Every risk profile I ever did, I did financial planning as a career, and I was a GM of a big financial planning company. So I understood risk, and my risk taking always came out as he's the guy who's going to invest in the futures and the this and the that and everything. As I've got older, it's tempered a little bit, particularly from a financial point of view. So I'm much more a property guy now, but I think from a business point of view, I'm still pretty much a big risk taker. I take risks on people. I take risks on projects if my intuition tells me to go for them. Even if the business plan sucks, I'll always go for it. I never go against my intuition. So whatever my intuition tells me to do, that's what I do. Whatever message I get from the universe that tells me what to do, I do that as well. And
so you mentioned that a couple of times about spirituality, and I don't go big into religion or politics on my show, but I find it quite interesting. You've talked about that a couple of times. What does that mean to you?
It means that God or the universe didn't just put you here for you to figure it out. There's guidance everywhere. And it's amazing that, like, when Lundy and I bought this painting behind us, which is called The Crossing. I'm sorry you can't see it on the podcast, but it's a wildebeest jumping off the riverbank, being chased probably at the Okavango Delta. When we hung that up, people used to come around and go, wow, that's a really cool painting. We look at it and we go, oh, that's exactly where we are in our business at the moment. Because we bought this right when COVID came, and we said, we're about to jump off into unknown waters. And so we're very cognizant, Mark, of signs and symbols that are around us. And we're on the road and we're talking about business. Lundy will often say, there's a billboard that's set, and it'll say the craziest things like, that's extraordinary. We go, okay, we better do that then. We don't believe that we don't believe in coincidences. So we think if something's there, for instance, I'll give you a very good example of that. We were in Turkey a number of years ago, and we're working with a group of people over a few days. And one guy, Wayne, just had this bee that just wouldn't leave him alone. Every day a bee had come and attacked him. None of us ever saw a bee. And he kept swatting the bee and he's swearing, and what's this darn bee doing, et cetera, et cetera. And we were laughing and we're going, there's a message from the bee, Wayne. There's a message coming from the bee. No, that's all crap, he says. Anyway, on about day 3, he drags out his business plan, for his new business and he's wanting advice on branding. And I look at it, we go, and both Lundy and I went, there's your brand. He said, why? We said, it's yellow and black. It's bee colors. Look at the logo. It even looks like the back of a bee that your designer has drawn. He goes, that's crazy. He goes, how can you say this? So that's why the bee's been buzzing you. Now that's 2015. So that business is nearly 10 years old. That guy's had extraordinary success in the last 10 years with that business. Just saying.
Yeah. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer.
Sure.
The first question is, what's the best decision you've made?
Asking my wife to go out with me.
Life changing?
Unbelievable.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Grab onto somebody's coattails and go for the ride and see where it takes you.
Who was the first person that you grabbed on their coattails to?
I think it was originally Tony Robbins and then Roger Hamilton, whom I worked with for 6 years.
Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
These days, it would be my wife, Lundy. Without a doubt, there's nobody else has helped me anywhere near as much as she has.
And what she added?
She's far smarter than me.
What does she bring to your game?
Confidence, surety, removes doubt, and just is the most positive person you'll ever meet in your life.
Amazing. Tell me about a regret that you have.
I could probably tell you 5 regrets of properties I didn't buy that I should have. Lakefront, beachfront, etc., and things like that. I don't have any regrets in business. Probably the only regret I have is that I didn't put my band back together the 3rd time after they broke up, because I think I could have got another 5 years out of my music career.
Okay, amazing. What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of our clients and what they've been able to achieve in their life. We've had clients who've listed their company on the New York Stock Exchange, the Australian Stock Exchange. We've had people win Global Peace Awards. We've had one of our clients has been knighted. So I'm just super proud of them.
Amazing. Why do you do what you do?
Because I believe that every single person has far more potential than life has led them to believe. And one day somebody asked me, so who are you in 3 words? And I said, it just came to me. So it's not something I'm attached to. I said, I'm the keeper of keys. So I think that we're able to unlock some of that potential in people.
Amazing. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy is leaving the world in a better place than what you found it, and ensuring that your footprint can last for some years past when you've left somewhere. And unfortunately for most entrepreneurs, it doesn't. Most entrepreneurs sell their business or retire and life just goes on.
And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
You can either find me on LinkedIn, so Mike Handcock with a D, Handcock, if you want to connect with me personally, or simply go to www.circleofexcellence.biz, fill in an assessment, and if you want to meet with us personally, we're happy to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you and learning about your business and you as well. You're a fascinating guy with huge amounts of experience. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Mark, you ask wonderful questions, and I know that you inspire thousands upon thousands of people. Keep doing it, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody listening.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.